Right.
There are two processes that you have to know. And one is accommodation, and Colin, will you take us through it just now? The one is accommodation, and the other one is pupil mechanism. And accommodation, there's a key to when to know when it is, of how to know when it is accommodation.
Because remember, you won't be asked just to give, or maybe you can be asked to give a definition or identify the definition of what accommodation
Yes.
is. Just remember that accommodation is, we are now with a working, how the eye works. And one of that is accommodation, and that is to see objects clearly, whether they are far away or close by. And that is the shape of the lens that has to change or adjust to see or
And
see
it's
those
so
objects.
important for our learners. The moment you're talking about moving closer or further away, the bowler is running, is going to bowl. What does the batsman see? Walking out, we once had a question, walking out of a cave and looking over the valley. Walking out of the cave was dark to light. That's something separate. Looking over the valley, that is distance. So please, distance, accommodation.
Well, while I'm sitting here, I'm looking at your guideline in front of me, and then I have to look up at the camera that's a bit further away from me. It's accommodation that takes place within the eye. Now the question is, when is the eye accommodated and when is it unaccommodated? Now there you have, on the screen there you have a diagram of an eye, and what is it that we have to look at? The shape of the lens.
Yeah, and it's called unaccommodated because objects further than 6 meters is our normal view. We look up and we look in front of us. That is our normal view. It's not necessary for our eye to adapt or to accommodate. So look at the shape.
And please make sure that you know accommodation. I've inserted the little, the other one, the shape of the lens at the bottom so that you can look at the difference. So there you have, when do you have a flatter lens and when is the lens more convex or rounded? So here we have, when we look at objects further than 6 meters away from the eye is unaccommodated, as Lorraine said, the reason why it is. But what happens there? Make sure that you know it is in your document, and I think all of you know, but there you have, it's all about muscles. You have here your ciliary muscle and you have your suspensory ligaments. So one needs to relax and the other one needs to contract or become, as in this case, it becomes taut. And the tension, as you can see, as it pulls away, it pulls actually the lens flatter so that the light is refracted or bent, but not as much as we would look at objects closer to the eye.
In other words, what you're going to do now, you're looking up at the screen, right? So when I give you the command, look down at your book or paper in front or your desk in front of you now. And up again and down again. And I'm sure you are aware of something happening in your eye. And when you look down, it is accommodation. And look at the picture and see how it differs from the previous one. And this is now for objects close by. They say closer than 5 meters, it depends, but for close by. And you have to know that story there that Colin's going to take us through. Like a nursery rhyme that you were taught to learn when you were in grade 1.
Right, and this is accommodation. The eye is accommodated, and it's all got to do with the shape of the lens. There you can see we've inserted the one with a flatter lens. So when will it become a rounder or more convex lens? It is when your ciliary muscle that is situated in the ciliary body, it contracts. What happens to the ciliary body? It moves closer to the lens. And as it gets closer to the lens, you can see these ligaments here, the suspensory ligaments, they slacken. They become less tense. And because of that, it causes the lens to become more rounded or more convex. And the rounder the lens, the more the light rays, incoming light rays, are refracted or bent so that it can project here on the yellow spot, the fovea, at the back of the retina.
In other words, a clear picture is projected on the retina. And that is so important, Matrix. We're not going to go through it again in detail because it's work that you should have done by now. But remember, once again, the moment it's about distance, close by further away, you need to know that it's accommodation and you need to know the story. Now, there's an example of a question that was asked previously.
Right, and there are many ways that you can get this. This specific one I've chosen, we're not going to go through the letter and name. Can you see how often it appears in question papers that you have to give the letter and the name, 2 marks for each. But look at the question 1.4.2. It says there, study diagram 1 and diagram 2. What process is responsible for the change in the shape of the part E? Now, if you can't identify part E, that question is meaningless and it will mean no marks for you. So that is why we started off with the structure of the eye. You must be able to identify each and every part and give the function of it. And all of these questions, it's like, you can score all full marks for these type of questions.
Matrix, for all topics in life sciences, especially where you have to learn structures and human processes and systems. And I want to stress what Colin has just said. If you know a picture and the labels and the functions of each label, you're halfway there. Then it's only for specific processes, such as accommodation, to continue and to learn. You really must know the work. And it doesn't help to just read it through. Make sure that you know the names. Life sciences has got lots of terms. Deal with it. Study. Right.
And it's all about interpretation. If you can just go back to the slide so that we can look at 1.4.3. There are so many other questions that they could have inserted here, all depending on how many marks, Look at the eye, look at the reaction of humans from the environment, and then you will see how many marks is allocated to this section. But there you have to identify. They don't ask you straight away to state the eye. You must choose diagram 1 or 2 when a person is reading a book. So when a person is reading a book, you can't tell me that a person will put a book on a couch and go and sit in the kitchen and read a book, because you have to read a book here close to you. I can hardly see as far as that screen. So if you must read, so you have to identify, but you have to know what is the shape of the lens when I have to look at a close by object. And this is reading a book.
And in this question, they just ask the name of the process, and then the learners have to know what the lens will look like when looking at the book at a close distance. They could have asked, now explain what happens from looking up to reading the book. In other words, the whole process of accommodation,
and that
which they didn't, but it could appear in another question.
And I mean, that could have been an additional 5 marks,
Yeah.
at least 4 to 5 marks for a question like that. So make sure that you do know accommodation. That is the first functioning of your eye.